Hi, Paul here from RC Experimentals. Today we're going to be looking at the Jeep front axle. This is the original chassis, a bit like a bathtub. The front suspension, there wasn't any. It is all one solid piece, although originally it did have these springs, no real shock in there, shock absorber in there, it's just a spring holder, but they were fixed between this point here and this point here, so there was no movement at all. Because this is also a budget build, we are going to make some sort of front axle from what is here. So we're going to dismantle this, we're going to cut it off, and we're going to produce an axle using whatever parts we can from the original plastic casing, because the whole thing is going to be sitting on a proper crawler chassis. So let's get to it. First off, we'll remove the existing wheels and steering mechanism, and then we'll cut the front half of this all the way through. We'll cut it off and we'll make a joining piece and take these two ends off. We're going to use some of this body work here, and the chassis work here, to make a box section and go between the two. I've actually already measured between this edge here and this edge here, and it's 110 millimeters or 11 centimeters, 4 3/8 inches, and we will make something long enough and we will glue it in between to hold these in the same place, and we will maybe use this steering bar, maybe not, but if we at least start there, we have somewhere to go forward. Let's take these steering knuckles off. Okay, here we go then. Get in there with the Dremel. So we'll be chopping off here. I don't see any reason why we can't continue to use this bottom spring mount. So here we are with the two steering knuckles. Still need a little bit of tidying up, but that's basically all it is. I'm just going to test fit them back on. There's no reason why they shouldn't fit. And then we can have a look and see. Is in fact, these slide off easy enough, I think. I did take them off once already. There we go. Because of the way this is done, I think it'll be useful just to swap it, turn it over, so this section is facing away from. And this is, this is very bendy, so it's not ideal, but it will suffice just to get it running. And as with all the updates and upgrades that we will be doing, we will be replacing this steering rod and steering arm with some proper steering arms at a later date. So let's start cutting cutting up the rest of this and start making a box section. We're looking at basically the length of this as the box section, and then we can cut it down accordingly and glue it and mount it into position. We're going to put the wheels aside. We'll start cutting this, and I'll show you what I've got when we're there. Where possible, I've left as many ribs in to ensure that the strength of this. However, I've had to clean some out because of where they sit together. So what we're going to be doing next is we will be gluing these and making a solid piece. We're going to use poly cement, and I have some clamps here which we will clamp it up with and leave it to dry while we tidy up the ends on the wheels, just to get them ready for some flat ends that we can glue them together with. So here we go. Let's start putting some cement on. Actually glued, we've got a nice strong box section which will be our axle. Right, we'll put that to one side and leave that to dry. We'll come back to the steering knuckles. Well, as you saw, we put them back on just to check what we want to do, because I suggested that perhaps we would keep the bottom mount here for the spring, this here, which just clips on, although I feel have a screw in here rather than just clipped on. We don't need some of this, but because we're keeping this, we need this area here as a flat area, so these curved sections we can get rid of, and I think I will also cut this down to this corner and remove a lot of this material as well. So let's get these off and we will start cleaning them up. Ready. So we'll move those out of the way, save those two bits, and we'll start chopping down these. Okay, so here we go. We have our two ends. I think I'll clean these up with a knife, or I'll get a file, clean these up. That will be our two steering knuckles. When the main box section is ready, we will join these together. We'll then have a front axle. Yep, we've got the mounts here for the springs, which I think if I clean this up, what I might do is drill a hole straight through the centre of that and put a screw in there and use a spacer in here. I appreciate these aren't proper, they are proper springs, but they're not proper dampers, and so I am going to use these short term right at the beginning. As I said, this is a budget build, so we're going to use as much as physically possible from the original. Likewise with the wheels and tyres. The wheels obviously plastic. These are the rear wheels, and they have a small hex, and the front wheels don't have a hex at all. They are riveted with a straight rivet straight through the steering pivots, knuckle. I don't know which bit is the knuckle actually, I don't know what the proper names are. These are very hard plastic, rubbery plastic. The wheels are vented, so there are holes. I don't know if you can see that, there's a hole in there, so they are vented. They're not all one piece, they are separate from the wheels. I don't know whether they're glued on. I don't think they're glued on. No, there we go. They're just very hard rubber tyres, so these will stay on there for the time being. We will be looking at getting a good set of wheels and a good set of tyres, but as I said, initially those are they will be mods later. Initially we're going to stick with as much of the original parts as we possibly can. These steering ends, knuckles, I'm not sure. When these were on originally, it had a really poor turning circle originally. Now I don't know if you can see here, there was a piece in there originally, about as wide as that line there, which was actually part of the moulding, which actually stopped the steering. It wasn't very much at all, the steering angle. So what I've done is to increase the steering angle is I've cut that piece of plastic away. The intention is to give it as much steering angle as possible, and what will restrict the steering angle when this is built will be the travel of the servo. So rather than it being restricted by these stops, it will be restricted by whatever the travel of the servo is and the servo arm. I'll pause the video here. I will finish tightening these up. There, I've cleaned these up. Use a bit of 600 grit dry paper just to flatten off the mating surfaces for the centre bar. They're nice and flat. The only thing I'm considering putting a piece or gluing a piece in here just to strengthen this area up a bit. Use a piece of this and fit inside in between these two and gluing it in to give this a little bit more strength. And I'll leave them to dry. Okay, so we got these bits drying, we got the other bit drying. There isn't actually much more I can do on this until the glue is dry, and then we'll carry on. We'll look at finishing off the box section in between and looking for the full link suspension and putting the mounts on for the full link suspension. So we'll pause it here and we'll come back when the glue's dry. The glue on these is still drying. I thought I'd just give you an update. We talked about these pins in here, the originally clip-on shock absorber mounts. I said we'd possibly put a screw through to hold these. We need to cut out the plastic bit. Now I've measured the diameter of the hole here and it's 5mm. So what I decided to do was cut some brake pipe, 5mm brake pipe, to the right length, and we'll get a screw that fits all the way through. We'll drill some holes in the side here, in the centre of where that is, and this fits in there as snug as a bug. I've taken the clamps off to check to see if the glue has dried. I thought it would be a good opportunity to start shaving down so it's a nice fit. We'll crack on with getting it ready. So. Well, there we are with the cleaned off edges. We need to be looking at this at 89mm. And we'll cut these ends off. Well, there we are. That's cut to 100. That's longer than we need. So what I want to do is creep up on it. So we'll start here, offer the bits up and just look at the length overall. So on the basis that this is too long, as we can see, yes, most definitely, we already worked out, we've already measured this as 100 millimeters, and we already said it needs to be 89, so this is already 10 millimeters too long, absolutely. So we'll take off I think 5 millimeters from each side. That should make us 1 millimeter over. There we go, 5 millimeters off each end. Now by the calculations, this should be about 1 millimeter too big. So really you shouldn't be able to see much. Well, it looks like we're going to have to build this up for the centre ones anyway. So we're looking at here and here. How does that look? Yeah, a little bit of toeing in. So I think we still need to take a touch. Perhaps we can just take a little bit off one end rather than a bit off both, which will be 1 millimeter rather than trying to slice off 0.5 millimeter off both ends. Actually, I think that's about it. I think we're there. The next stage is to make these two steering ends and the box section that we've just produced all one piece, and then we can look at putting the full-length suspension mounts on here. As you can see, I've got this glued up and clamped it to the table so it's all flat to keep everything in line. I've also been looking at the old chassis, and it seems to me that there's already a ready-made piece here for the top links to go on the top. So I'm thinking if I just cut this piece right out, cut out these sections here, I'll have the space here ready-made for the top links, and I can attach that to the top of this cross member when this is all glued. This is going to take ages to cut away and cut all the pieces off, so I won't bore you with Dremel work. We'll come back and I'll show you what I've cut away, what I've got ready, and therefore we can have a look at fitting what would be the top link brackets. Right, well, I've finished cutting this out. I've left some of the ribs in, well, a lot of the ribs in there, to give it additional strength. I think it still needs cutting back a bit more, but I don't really want to do that until it's after it's attached here and I have the upper links, which I can position and drill the holes and everything, and then I know where it is, and then I'll round off some corners. I've beveled some edges just to make it look a bit tidier. It was getting late, so I decided to leave this overnight. So we'll take it off now and see how we're doing. Well, here we are. Seems fairly rigid, so we should be good to go, although I'm still a bit concerned that these are just butt joints and therefore there's going to be some strength issues. Yeah, I think that would be just right, and glue on there, and then we'll have the top mounts for the swinging arms. Or top links, or whatever you want to call them. It's not going to be in the centre, so it'll be off here. What I'd like to do now is just try these together and actually put this together to see how it fares. Top link, suspension link on there like that. Right, the next thing, I'll tear this down again. The next thing we're going to do is cut these out, which is the shock mounts, which are supposed to clip on, and I've got some screws here. We'll drill some holes, and I made some mounts that will replace the plastic bits so we can screw straight through. So I'll tear it down off camera. Okay, the next stage is to remove these bits so we can add in these sections here. I've already measured, in fact I'll show you, I've measured the OD of the thread, and that's 3mm. So we need to get a 3mm drill and put through here afterwards for mounting these screws. However, the first thing is we've got to take these out. I've been thinking of different ways that we can do this. Could try and cut them out. The trouble is I don't really want to damage anything else around here. I can't use the cutting wheel for the Dremel just in case I accidentally cut in there. However, I've got like a grinding bit. It's really small. I don't know if you can see. The problem is with the Dremel, it goes so quick it melts the plastic, but I thought this is probably easier to do than to try and cut it with a craft knife or anything. But I thought what we could do is take the main bulk of it out and then tidy it up afterwards with a very sharp craft knife. So here we go. Okay, well that's taken the bulk of it out on both of those, and he's tidying up. We can use the file to clean it up and get it smooth. So we'll finish cleaning that up. And oh, there we go. Done a pretty good job of that. So there we go, both sides nicely trimmed out. Okay, what we need now is a 3mm drill. Be right back. I'm going to place the holes virtually right in the centre, which is basically where they were anyway. We're right in the centre of this. So about there. We'll put a small hole in first, although I haven't got a chuck that'll hold these, so I'm going to have to go quite large for the pilot hole, as it were. I'm going to do both sides, so rather than drill and go straight through, I'm going to drill all four and then enlarge them. So I don't know if you can see those marks that we're going to drill in there. So right, well there's the got some mould flashing here. I'm just going to clean off and just so it doesn't get in the way of the screws. Okay. There we go. Okay, so we've got the smaller hole at the moment. That they won't. Well, I suppose arguably you could say I could thread it in. Well, might be worth just leaving it that size and screwing it so it's a tight fit in the plastic as well. yeah, maybe I don't go any bigger than that. Okay, so I'm just going to do this as a test fit. I don't think my fingers are going to do that. I need a pair of pliers. Right, I'll be right back. Right, I've got my small needle nose. This is a bit fiddly. I think it's probably better if I at least make this side the clearance hole. So I don't think I need a... Okay. So I've got to clean up with the fire. Leave some on the other side. Try again. It's actually a very snug fit in the pipe, so I think it's where it's burred over on the inside that the threads are cutting into the burr on the pipe itself. So so there's one. These have to come off so we can screw them together, but that's beautiful. Excellent. So next one. Again, screwing through the pipe, it's a little bit where I've cut it with a pipe cutter, and a pipe cutter leaves a little burr on the inside, and although I've given it a little bit of a sanding, it does tend to leave that little bit of burr on the inside, which is no bad thing. So there we go, that one's in. Lovely. go, nuts are on. So now we're in a position to add on our upper suspension link arms. I need to find the centre. We'll mark this to the centre and we'll attach it. I'm aware this video is getting a little bit long now, so we'll finish this build in a part 2. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was educational. If not, certainly entertaining. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.